Hey, don't do ministry alone. This is Practically Pastoring.
Well, welcome back to Practically Pastoring, everybody. We've got me here today, Andrew, Tim up in Newport Richey, he calls it Trinity, Florida, Jeff in Baltimore, Maryland, and Delmar in Sumter, South Carolina. Today, we are talking about two questions that feel like they're pretty different on the surface, but are actually both just about pastoral health. The first is about a pastor who took a new job, and while nothing is actually wrong, it just feels off. And the second is a much more practical question, because this is, after all, Practically Pastoring, about time off and whether churches actually let pastors rest, or they just say they do. So we're going to dive right in. I'm going to read the first question before the fellas jump in and have at it. Here we go. I took a new job as an associate pastor about 6 months ago in a different state. My wife and kids really are enjoying life here so far. My wife's job is going well, and she's going to have opportunities to advance, and my kids have quickly built relationships through school and sports. However, my job at the church and our community at church has just been meh. There's not been much of a team environment with the church staff, but not in a negative or rude way. Everyone just does their own thing and worries about their own ministry. We've struggled to build any friendships or meaningful relationships within the church, with both the congregation and the staff. Everyone is nice, but relatively closed off and seems to already have their own circles. Those are just a couple of examples. But in a nutshell, everything about the church just feels bland. I had a little concern about the vibes during the interview process, but just chalked it up to us doing a lot of things via Zoom due to being in a different place. Nothing is wrong, but something just doesn't feel right. Everything is simply fine, but I don't love working here, nor does my family love attending our church. Something that bothers me is that I struggle a little bit to invite people to church, knowing that community can be tough to find, and I don't think that we would attend this church if it wasn't for me working here. I also feel a bit isolated on staff since it's a bit corporate. Do those feelings matter? And did I make a mistake in taking a job? I am conflicted due to everything else going well, except for my job and our church life not being where it feels like it should be. Would appreciate any input and advice. By the way, both questions today were kind of through a curveball, not from our Facebook group, but from the Reddit subreddit R Pastors. Both of these questions are from there. So this is a real question that's not about scandal, conflict, or bylaws, thank God. There's not a doctrinal issue in the church. It just feels like nothing is broken, but I don't know if this is where I'm supposed to be. And honestly, I have been there, and I think there are some times that when we're in situations like that, it's a little bit harder to evaluate because there's not an obvious villain in the story. The senior pastor isn't conniving. No one's stealing money. It's just kind of beige and boring, which is exhausting. So, fellas, what do we have? What do we think listening to this question?
Well, first of all, I'll jump in and say, did you make a mistake? We're beyond the what ifs on that. The way I look at it is you're learning, if you've never been in a corporate church environment per se, maybe you didn't even know that's what it was until you got in there. I know when I was in a church, I took a position, and once I got in there, it was stated very clear to me that you are not friends with your staff members. You are co-laborers in Christ. And I was like, oh, didn't know. Yeah, that was stated to me. Yeah, I know. It sounds
keep the tensions high, okay?
Yeah, but I didn't. Yeah, exactly. But I didn't know. So I would say, I don't think I made a mistake. I think you went in there with the information you knew. And if this is not something you've ever experienced before, this type of church, quote unquote, then, well, now you know. I will say a couple things that raise me up is church should be exciting, because if God is moving in a place, like, that's exciting. I mean, and that could be in a church filled with any kind of people, whether they're people your age or not, because the gospel itself is exciting. If you get a very much bland vanilla ice cream feeling from your church, I would start internally, because maybe you're just, by internally, I mean, evaluate your own heart first. Maybe this is so different from you that you're having a hard time adjusting to it, and that could be your own defense mechanism. Is now the good thing is you have a wife, and maybe she's picking up on it, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're not passing down cues to our spouses, because sometimes we do that, don't we, fellas? Like, we'll have a bad day or a bland day at the office and come home, and then our wives can pick up on that too. So I would start internally and say, hey, why am I not excited? If the church, are the people around you excited to be there? I think that would be the faithful believers in that church. And then once you kind of evaluated inside, I would say, okay, move outside. But I would start looking at my own inside, because I didn't know when I took the position in my church, and there were some other extenuating factors. But if in this church it's not, then I would definitely, like I said, start inside, write it down. I keep a journal. I like to see it in front of me, and hopefully you've got some pastors in your corner, like my three buddies here, who you can tell stuff to as well.
Part of me wants to know what his previous role was at his last church, because the associate pastor part of this is a big part of it to me. When the church I served at previously to this, when we got there the first 6-8 months, year, they were rough. We were attending another church on Sunday evenings just to kind of get a sense of community. We both are from this area, and so we had moved back from Texas after seminary, and that was the church that was going to get us to be able to be back home, to raise our kids and all those things. But I had been on staff at bigger churches for the first third of my ministry career, whatever it's going to shape up to be by the time I'm retiring. But I had never been the solo youth guy. I had been at big churches with teams of youth ministry people, and this church hires me, and I am the only youth person. I was literally in a different building from the rest of the church staff. So I went from coming in and basically having what we have here as this podcast, where everything was collaborative and we were making fun of each other and having fun, and then, shoulder up to do ministry together, to, hey, you are on an island by yourself. And it took me years to figure out how to function in that environment after being on a team elsewhere. And really a big part of figuring that out was Tim and I becoming buddies about 4 months after I started at that church, and then having somebody else who was in a similar position as the solo youth pastor at a church, who had always been used to being on a team elsewhere. So I wonder what part of that is the role that you're in. Associate ministry is a tricky role because you are not the youth pastor. You're not the senior pastor. You're not the worship pastor. You are the guy who is kind of doing everything for everybody. But if everybody is doing their stuff really well, sometimes you look around and you're like, what am I supposed to be doing today? And so I think that might be a part of it as well. I would be curious to know what his previous role was before taking that one.
Yeah, I've got a couple thoughts here. First, 6 months isn't that long. I'm sorry. In ministry land, you don't even have everybody's names yet. You're still learning. That's what I'm saying. You're still learning people. You're still learning names. You're still learning the culture. I get that it might be a little bland, but that might just be because it's not what you're used to, and it's different. Now, the community aspect, that is going to take time because you're coming into a place where people have years of relationship equity built up with each other. So that might take a little bit of time.
The great theologian Ben Rector said you can't make old friends.
Dude, that song makes me cry.
It's a great
music video.
Song.
It's so good.
There's a chance that you were brought in and you have a fresh set of eyes, and maybe you can identify some of these areas where, hey, we need to maybe grow in as a church. We just hired a new worship and associate pastor at Lakeview, and he's attending an elder meeting in 2 weeks. And one of the questions we're going to ask him is, what are you seeing that we don't? And maybe this is something that this individual could see as an associate pastor of, hey, it's tough for families who are coming in new to break into community here and to find community. So what can we do to establish easier on-ramps to community? I just wouldn't be so discouraged after 6 months, unless there's something glaring and it's really off. I get that the vibe thing isn't quite there yet, but again, that sounds like a culture thing for now. I don't know. I hope I'm not coming off as too harsh. I'm just saying, slow down a little bit, take your time, establish roots, get to know the people, get to know the community. You're called to be a pastor there. There were not just months, but years of my time at Lakeview where we were not inviting people to Lakeview. We weren't comfortable there. The vibes were different. It felt a little bland, but we knew this is where God had called us to pastor, where God called me to pastor. And I'm really thankful that we stuck it out the long haul. I'm not saying that's going to be your story, but sometimes you're called to stick it out through a season where it doesn't quite feel like where you want or wish it would.
Going back to the associate part of the role, I don't think anybody's expecting you to be there for 25 years. That's typically not how the associate role works. So the role that I am in now, where this is my 10th year here at Safety Harbor, I wouldn't be here if I had jumped ship when things were awkward at my previous church. My longevity, which 6 years doesn't feel like that long now, but the 6 years that I was there are what laid the groundwork and built the relationships that got me my job here. You don't know what God is doing there, but you have to assume that he called you there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gone. You wouldn't have moved states, moved geographic locations, moved your family, figured out housing, all that stuff. So just because the 40 hours that you were spending in the office don't give you butterflies and, that yippy dippy feeling, that doesn't mean that God's not working. Big things can still happen even when it's not your perfect dream scenario.
And if you guys thought Tim sounded mean, wait for this. Maybe your vibes are off, bro. You know what I mean? Like, why is it always the new person coming in who's the arbiter of the vibes? Maybe you're the one with the bad vibes and you don't know it yet. And I mean, that's a harsh way of saying it, but I am always a proponent of like, you didn't come to the church just to grow other people. Like, God put you in that church to change you as well. You're a member there too. So I remember when I was on staff at a church in Orlando, I went through this experience of like, I'm the new guy and the staff is, at least the core of the staff has been together for maybe not in the roles that they are, but they have known each other for like over 15 years. So they just have things that develop over time. Like, I mean, even down to little silly things, like little inside jokes that you just feel like left out of. And what I realized was through just some counseling and things that I went through in that time period, because of my like process of ordination, they put me through some counseling, and that happened to be the church I was in. I realized, oh wow, I have a lot of insecurity when it comes to feeling left out. And so I am sort of like imposing that on this group of people, that they're keeping me out and they don't want me in. And actually, that was a lot of it was just my own insecurity of feeling left out. And so over time, that church staff, I mean, I'm not there anymore and I'm really happy where I am. But as far as like the weekday relationships, having that energy from fellow staff members, and like we would go to lunch to get to Chipotle like 3 times a week, like the same little Chipotle 5 minutes from the church. Hey, you guys want to go grab lunch? And like, I don't have that now. And it's not that I'm like feeling terrible about that, but I just like, that was great. But I had to go through a period of feeling like I don't know these people. I feel kind of left out, and a little bit of self-awareness and self-discovery to go, oh, a lot of that's me. And they're just friends. They've just been, you can't make, old friends quickly. It's just like the reality of the situation. And so I would tell this guy, like, the fact that your wife is happy and your kids are happy and like there's no scandal at the church, that's 3 huge green flags that would trump a lot of any little beige or yellow flags that you might have. If your wife is having opportunity in her career to exercise her gifting and be called forward, like, I think it's just a mistake to think that this whole thing of I wouldn't go to church here if I wasn't on staff here. I understand where that comes from because I've been in that situation before, but also you are on staff there. And so like that question is kind of a moot point because you might be at that church to be part of what begins to change the things that you would think, well, if it's not what I like, I wouldn't go to church here. I mean, when we came to this church, there was no kids here, basically. And my, at the time, 3-year-old daughter was like one of the only little ones. And most Sundays, the only little one. And I struggled for a long time. Like, do I want to go to a church where my kid is the only kid in the church? And now it's not like that. We're a church of 50 people, 60 people. And it is like, I mean, if you watch our live stream, you're going to see just kids running around everywhere during a service, which is awesome. And unfortunately, the loudest ones are mine usually, but like it just took years and years and years for that to change. So I would play the long game. 6 months is almost nothing. It's not nothing, but in the big scheme of things, it is almost nothing.
But it's almost nothing.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking 10 years, 6 months is like, I mean, it's just like it's a blip.
That's a sermon series.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It's one sermon series worth of time. And I mean, I would just try to own what I can own. How much of this is on me to build relationships with people, and I would also say like they hired you, they want you there. They brought you in for a reason. So I would have some security in that, but then also just do your part to pursue relationships.
So Dale, here's my question for you. How much of this sounds like just the normal transition stuff? You're the one of the 4 of us that has transitioned most recently. So how much of this sounds like just the normal lag between a transition? And how much of it sounds like it might actually be a cultural issue at the church?
Sure. You actually were talking about what was in my head. If you're coming from a completely different context, you got to allow yourself to adjust to this as well. I was going on a 500-mile-an-hour train, and now I'm not on that train. It's a different pace. So I used to measure how productive my current week is by how it looked at my last church. And that's not fair. That's not that's like if you had a bad breakup with your last girl and you're judging your new girl against her. What I've come to realize is different
churches. That's what we call projecting, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think one of the things I've come to realize is different churches have different paces. We all have the same end goal in that we make disciples, but we have different roles in this kingdom. And even to this day, Andrew, to your question, there are days where I'm like, oh, man, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? And then I'll go and talk with one of the other elders, and he's like, dude, this is great. Like, we love the way that things are shaping up around here. So I will say for me, this probably is this I would be willing to bet this may be some transition lag that you're facing. But also I would throw in one thing, man, get a couple of wise people. If your church has elders, man, I can't think of better people for you to befriend who could just be honest with you. Fortunately for me, the pastor and I are very good friends at the church, and I'm also really good friends with several of my co-elders. So we're able to really knock around some meaningful conversations. But also, one of the things I would challenge you is just to open your eyes and be aware of where God is moving in the church. There again, only 6 months in, that's hard to see because you don't know what it looked like a year ago. But I can look back over the course of a year, 2, and now 3 years at the church and say, wow, look what's changed. So anytime I start to feel down, it's kind of like the way God told the Israelites in the Old Testament, look at the mountain range behind you, man. Look where you've come. And that'll give you a lot of encouragement for going forward. What we're not saying is if this is a wrong fit, you should stick it out forever. But I think what I do hear is saying is, man, you need to give it some time and marinate in it and allow your new ministry way of life to take root before you uproot it. It should feel different. And sometimes people, when things feel different, they interpret that as bad or bland. It could just be different. And that's okay because God may be using this to sanctify you. I know, speaking from my experience, this has been a huge point of growth and sanctification in my life, switching gears to where I'm at now. So I would encourage you to see what God has in store with your own spiritual life in this.
Jeff, what do you do when nothing's wrong, but it still just doesn't feel like you think it should? If your spirit feels a bit unsettled, where do you go? What resources are there?
I mean, I think the first place I would think to go would be sort of back into what were my motivations and my expectations coming to this place. I think a lot of us have unspoken, probably unhealthy expectations going somewhere. We're thinking I'm going to go here and everything's going to be great. Some of that can come from like an escapism. If we were really having a hard time at the previous place, we go to the new place thinking, I just want to escape this old bad place that we've probably demonized worse than it is in our head in some aspects. And we go to the new place. And maybe in the interview, we thought that, I don't know, the other youth guy, Bob, was going to be our best friend. And then we get there and realize like Bob already has a best friend and we're not like that compatible. We don't like the same stuff. And so instead of going, maybe there's somebody else in the church who I could build a relationship with, or maybe I can find new interests that match more with Bob and have a friend, we go kind of like dark and go, well, the vibes are off here and I don't like it here and I wouldn't go to church here. So I would just kind of like go back into what are your expectations of what those friendships were going to look like? Because like Del said, you can't impose the old church on the new church. It's not the same people. I know that when I came here, I did a lot of that projecting of like the unhealth of the elders from my previous church on the elders here, where I would kind of go into elders meetings here, like almost ready to fight, like almost ready to have disagreement. And that didn't lead to me being like, hey, let's go get lunch. Let's get to know each other. It created a almost, I don't know, it's a weird way to say it, like pre-adversarial relationship where it was like I was expecting to have disagreements with people and they didn't have any disagreements with me. They were excited to have my family there, excited to have me there, and I had to let go of some of that stuff in the past. So I would just say kind of explore, maybe journal, maybe talk to a counselor if you need to. What were your expectations? What did you like, name it? What did I think was going to be like the average weekday life here when I got here, and what is it actually like, and where are those two things not matching? And then kind of deal with that sort of unspoken maybe grief a little bit.
Tim, how much weight do you put in the fact that every other area of the family's life seems to be thriving, even though the church life feels flat?
This is a bigger deal than you think. This matters a ton because if your wife and kids are doing well in your community and in your area, you can typically stick it out a little bit longer during a difficult ministry season, as opposed to if they are struggling in the area and it's really tough for them and you're struggling in the ministry world as well, it's going to be really, really difficult to make it the long haul for your posting that God has called you to. So I would actually have a lot of weight in this area. If my wife and kids are doing well and they're thriving, that's going to matter a ton to me as a husband and a father, for sure.
And one piece I just keep going back to is having been there, having been at a church that I didn't want to be worshiping at and wasn't inviting people to, and just didn't really feel like I had community there. You can find community in other places. Tim and I were youth pastors at similar churches 45 minutes away from each other and barely knew each other on Facebook and connected to go to a conference because we couldn't afford a room individually. And that was a huge hinge point in my ministry.
Well, Andrew, not only did we connect, we had our wives connect, we had our kids connect. So there are ways to get connected and have community, even if your church isn't quite where you want it to be in that area.
Yeah. And I think I was telling Tim's mom at an event we were at last night that if it was not for that relationship in my late 20s, I would probably be selling real estate or something. I don't know that I would have lasted in ministry if I did not have a ministry colleague who wasn't at my church and didn't need anything from me, but was just my friend because we needed friends. And that kept me in ministry way longer than a $20 Starbucks card from an elder would have in that season of life. Although a Starbucks card is always a great thing to get. So if you want to send me one, that'd be cool too. Before we get to the next question, we got to talk about something that is a lot more than just staff culture. It's mugs and T-shirts. Jeff, why don't you tell us about church merch?
Church merch? I was like, whoa, what?
That was supposed to be Del. Listen, reading is hard, guys. Reading is hard.
You wrote this.
I
You
know.
want me just to call it into this one?
Yeah, Del, jump in.
All right. Well, before we move on today, I was thinking, and I think our listeners should know that this episode is brought to you by people wearing clothes. But more specifically, not just wearing them, they're the people who make the clothes that I keep with me all the time around my house. This is church merch. This is merch for your church. If you've not worn church merch before, you ought to give it a shot. It's super soft. The turnover time is really fast. And it's not just shirts. They make mugs. They can even put your church logo or whatever you want to call it on JBL speakers. I mean, it's insane. I would be willing to bet that Matt over there would come and brand a cow in your pasture if you wanted that done with your church merch logo. Anyways, if you want to go there, check it out. It's promotionsguy.com/church merch. I'll say it again, promotionsguy.com/church merch. This is merch for your church, and we were very grateful. They've been longtime sponsors. They are also, when we have our Practically Pastoring Conference, they're a tentpole sponsor there as well. We love you guys, and I would encourage anyone to check them out.
While we are talking about not burning out in ministry, Timmy, why don't you tell everybody about Preach 26 coming up?
I'd love to. It's a big deal for us because part of our mantra here at Practically Pastoring is don't do ministry alone. So it's why partnering with Preach 26 was such an easy decision for us. It's a new conference for pastors and ministry leaders. It's happening October 6th through the 8th in the Woodlands, Texas. You get to be in the room with other pastors navigating the same challenges as you while learning from some pretty impactful leaders like Dane Ortlund, Brian McCormick, Hakeem Bradley, and quite a few more. There's also some bonuses here. The purchase of your ticket is going to automatically enter you in a giveaway for a 3-night vacation. Let's go. For you and a plus one. That could be you and your spouse, or you could take Andrew, either one. You get a getaway, 3 nights, Jackson Lake Lodge in Wyoming. Seats are capped to keep this environment intimate, so you're not going to want to wait. Grab your spot. Head on over to www.preach26.com. Use this code. This is going to get you what you want. Pastor Pod at checkout. It's going to get your name entered twice in all the giveaways throughout the conference, including the one you really want, which is a weekend getaway with Andrew or your spouse in Wyoming. That's preach26.com, code PastorPod.
All right, fellas, it is that time of year. I think most of us have been on a trip or are going on a trip. So here's a question that is very practical to where we are right now. How is vacation handled at your church? Is it spelled out in your contract? How much do you get? Do you get time off other than vacation? Do you use all of it? Are you encouraged to use it or pressured to never be away? This question feels like it's a little bit simpler, but I think it gets at church culture in a big way. If you want to experience a church where the vibes are off, be at a church where you're not expected to use your vacation time, because what a church says about rest and what it actually rewards are often two very, very different things. So I would say that number one, get your vacation time in writing. And if you're interviewing, now is a great time. But if you've been at a church for a while and you don't know what your vacation time is, have that awkward conversation, because churches and pastors need some vacation. Need some clarity on vacation days, on carryover. I was at a church where we had unlimited carryover, and then they changed it to 3 days when many of us had
What
weeks
does
and
that
weeks
mean?
and weeks. So if you don't have, if you get 10 vacation days and you only use 7, then you get to carry over 3 to the next year.
Gotcha.
And so if you're in a position where if you've been there a while and you have accrued more than 10 days and you are only using those 10 days, well, then eventually can you just take a month off? That's the carryover. Is there a max on the carryover? You should know all of these policies that your church has. So fellas, what is your vacation policy? How much do you have? Does it increase with time spent? Let's get into all of it. And then we'll get into sabbatic rhythms, sabbaticals, conference time, comp time. Dell, you just had a group of kids on like a church youth camp. I've been at churches where people kind of expect that to be the youth pastor's vacation, to which I say, what is wrong with you? So yeah, get
And
into it.
then they're like, why do youth pastors move on every 18 months?
Yeah, it's so weird. We just gave him a vacation
Crazy.
with 20 kids that didn't shower.
Well, I guess I'll jump in because mine, I don't know if it's in writing or not. I like literally don't. I think it might be in my job description. I know the sabbatical rhythm is part of my denominational stuff. And shame on me, I have not taken a sabbatical when I probably could have. I believe I've been here 9 years and I'm almost positive it's after 7 years you get a 3-month sabbatical. So I am very much due for one. Now, I will say the culture of my church is that I am very free to take vacation. I believe that I get 3 Sundays off and I can be gone for 2 weeks a year. I believe that's in my like job description. But my church is very, as far as I know, unless there's a lot of rumblings in the, in the gossip world that I'm unaware of, which is I guess always possible. But my church is very like flexible. So one of the things I'd encourage, especially if you're a solo pastor, I'm speaking as a solo pastor of a very small church. You might even say a micro church or a nano church, right? Like 50, 60 people on a Sunday. I have learned to allow my weekday mornings to be pretty loose and slow. I don't worry about being in the office at a certain time because most of the ministry stuff ends up happening later in the afternoon or, sometimes there's evening stuff, but my church is there's nobody that's like, you need to be in the office from this time to this time. It's more about like the things that need to be done are getting done. And then I had to go through a period of like allowing myself, like lately, the big one for me is like, I miss small group quite a bit because right now we are in like my daughter's tournament softball season and I'm coaching and doing a bunch of stuff and it happens to be Wednesday nights. And so like I have really had to let go of the fact that like small group can totally happen without me. There's a very capable leader. People know what to do. They're adults. They're not youth. They know how to like find a key and get in the building and like they can figure it out and nothing bad happens. And I think a lot of the culture for me, I've noticed a lot of the culture of pastors who don't take vacations, especially small church pastors, is we get like superhero syndrome where we think like, if I don't do it, it's not going to happen. To which I say, well, then develop some other leaders. Like you have a church with adults in there who have run families and run businesses and who are retired, who can run things for you. It might not look exactly how you want, but you can let it go. And so, yeah, we take 2 weeks vacation, usually a year. Last year, we took like a long weekend during a softball tournament, which was pretty fun. And then this year, we're going to Tennessee like in August for a week. So we do take vacation. And we actually stole this idea from Jean-Marc Comer, but the fallow month idea where you like don't do anything. So we do that in August. So there's no small group. There's nothing but Sunday morning in the month of August.
Yeah, our church is similar in that we don't have vacation. I think some pastors on here you've worked where every hour is micromanaged out. And if you need to take a half a day off work, you have to put in for that. I've been in that environment. And now
You need to put in a month early to go to a doctor's appointment.
Yeah. I mean, there are some churches like that. We all know that. Our current model in the church I'm in is just don't abuse it. Get what you need to get done. And if you're going to be out, make sure it's covered. And also every family is different in how they can vacation. And I think that churches who take account for that are better off. For example, my wife teaches. So the summer is pretty much our vacation time. That's when we can. So at the end of last month, my wife and I went to Seattle or Mount Rainier for our 10-year anniversary. The next week, we came back, took our church to Tim's church, which was awesome. We got to crash in Tim's youth room for a whole week. So, and then I got back from there, and last week we went to Williamsburg. So I had a little vacation sandwich in between summer camp. I'm not going to do anything else this summer. I'm vacation out, if I'm to be honest with you. But it's good whenever you're basically told just don't abuse it. And I will say, if you are on a church with a couple staff, or if you're networked like Andrew and Tim and Jeff are, don't be afraid to let someone else fill your pulpit. I think sometimes that pastors feel like, oh, if I'm not preaching every Sunday, something bad's going to happen. Well, that's, as Jeff would say, that's a you problem.
It's control, baby. That's a control issue.
Exactly. Be willing to let it go. And if it isn't what you thought it would be, it's okay, because that's where trust comes in. But yeah, I would be a big advocate of allow there to be conversation about when your family needs to be out, because there's going to be different ebbs and flow. As your children grow older, there are going to be certain years where you need a vacation and do certain things that are different than other years. So if you're in a church where your hours are counted, one of the things I would tell you is it's very easy when, at least for different personalities. For me, I'm the kind of person, I treat my vacation hours like my money. I hoard it up and I don't spend it. And I like to, if they don't roll over, I didn't use them. One thing I would say is, if you're in a church like that, chances are you have a pastor over you, or some kind of senior officer or whatever you want to call it. If they're not concerned with you taking your hours off, then you may be in a culture that can be toxic, right? The first church I was ever in, there was only 2 staff, and the pastor never took vacation, and he didn't even take off Saturdays. And I think I shared this on the pod a long time ago. He said, well, if the Satan doesn't take a day off, why should we? And then Jeff was like, well, why compare yourself to the greatest enemy? And I would say Jeff is right. So I remember those things, man. So, but yeah, if you're not taking your hours and your supervisor isn't concerned about that, then that can be a red flag as well about the hustle culture of your church.
We've got a couple of things here at Lakeview. This is an easy win for a lot of churches, just so you guys know. Like, an easy win, especially if you're overseeing staff, is to give your staff time, especially when there's ministry lulls and there's low moments throughout the year. We all have ministry seasons where we know it's going to be lighter. So there's actually a week in between Christmas and New Year's where this doesn't count towards your vacation time. The offices, there's no office hours. Like, take that week off. It's an additional time for you. Now, for all of our full-time employees at Lakeview, we do have it kind of spelled out in the employee contract. Here's how many weeks you get, and if you've been here this many years, you'll get more vacation time, etc. We actually operate, it's like, orthopraxy. We actually operate more like Delmar's church, where yes, it's spelled out here. However, if you need something, like, take the time you need, communicate it clearly, don't take advantage of it. But there is going to be a lot of freedom, especially when we don't have offices built yet. So you already have a lot of freedom in your job right now. So yes, spend time with your family. Yes, take care of things to take care of. But yes, please work hard. Like, do the job you've been called to do. One win that we've had over the last 2 years now at Lakeview for our staff, we have sabbatic Sundays. So every 7 weeks, we ask every staff member to take off at least once every 7 Sundays. So not all at once, obviously. So every staff meeting, we quickly remind each other, hey, over the next 3 weeks, which staff member is taking that Sunday off? We'll cover for each other. They'll have volunteers cover for themselves. There have been some times where a staff member has said, hey, my key volunteer can't make it. I'm going to take my sabbatic Sunday a few weeks later this time just to make sure everything lines up. And that's fine. Like, as long as you are conscious, you're taking that time. We want you to take that time off. I don't think you're going to survive the long haul in ministry if you do have Superman syndrome and you think everything depends on you. You'll quickly learn when you're taking regular time off that God is bigger than you think he is, and then sometimes you think you are. So time off is a big deal for us. It's an easy win for us. There are moments where I would rather be given more time off than a gift card, because time is money for all of us. So don't abuse it. I'm thankful for the freedom we do have at Lakeview. I mean, I had this conversation with our brand new staff member last week who's used to a very high octane environment where it's meetings scheduled all day, every day. You're in office all day, every day. And now you get to Lakeview and it's like, wait, we don't have like regular office hours. There's only a handful of meetings I'm required to be at every week. So we had a great conversation about time management, what that looks like and how to get stuff done, but also hang with your fam. So it depends on the church culture, the church environment. But for me, it's yes, take your time. It's important, but also don't abuse it.
When I got here to Safety Harbor, we were not rolling around in money as a church. But one of the ways that they said, hey, we're we want you to be here. We're going to try our best to figure out the finances, but we are going to match everything that you had worked up to at previous places. So the previous church I was at, you started at 2 weeks vacation, then after 3 years got to whatever. And so instead of starting over at hey, you have 10 vacation days a year, I started here as though I had been working here for 10 years already. So right away I had 4 weeks vacation or 20 days vacation,
Smart.
which as pastors, we can be very strategic with those days. If you're already not working one weekday because of Sunday, so our family, we go to Arkansas for 2 weeks every summer and cosplay as rednecks visiting my wife's family. It's wonderful. We get to, pet goats and do all the Arkansan things, but we're gone for 2 weeks and it's usually 8 or 9 vacation days. Now, no one is here in the office tracking, but I keep track of myself. I try to be gone for 2 weeks, but only miss one Sunday. So that's one of the ways
you can be strategic
that we manage that.
Leave right after church on Sunday, miss the next one. Yeah.
If you were an attorney, you couldn't do that because Monday, Friday, they all count the same. But for us as pastors, many people in our congregation are only going to see, oh, he was here on Sunday or he wasn't there on Sunday. Or I might work Monday through Friday the week before we leave, getting everything ready. So then I take 2 weekdays that next week. Or there's creative ways to stack vacation time. And ours was in writing when I started. It's been 10 years with kind of me at the helm of the ship. And the vacation policy hasn't been revisited. So I think really in theory at now I'm supposed to be at 5 or it might max out at 6 weeks. I'm never gone 6 weeks. In the 10 years I've been here, I've only missed 2 consecutive Sundays one time. And that was for a sabbatical, not for vacation. But part of that is we've got 4 kids. There's life and rhythm at home. And there might be a season 15 years from now when I'm starting to have grandkids. And then I'm going to be where my kids are for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And I'm going to miss more Sundays in a row. And I will have banked the decade or decades of faithfulness. Hey, look how I've done this. And as life stages change, the way you take vacation changes. When I had 4 kids in diapers or 3 kids in diapers and another one, messing his pants once or twice a week, we did not want to spend 18 hours in the car getting someplace to go on vacation. That was not relaxing for anybody. But a couple of extra days where we could just sit at home or go to the beach because we live in Florida was something that we would do. So we would kind of do the micro vacation of 2 or 3 days here, 2 or 3 days there. So life stages determine how you take vacations. But going back to what Tim said, there are several weeks and rhythms that as a small church, Jeff and I are in similar boats. I think we were around 80 people yesterday. So I'm the only full-time staff member. We don't have huge bonuses we can give our staff, but a week off is essentially a 2% bonus. And so saying, hey, the week between Christmas and New Year's, no one's coming in. We'll get that Sunday figured out, but no one's working that week. That is a 2% bonus. The week of 4th of July, hey, take a couple of days. We're not doing Wednesday night stuff. We're doing Sunday morning differently. What can we do to make life lighter for our staff? Spring break, if you live in a county where everybody gets spring break at the same time, just be smart with what you get to give your staff. And that's going to give you so much more buy-in than a policy that says, hey, you have unlimited PTO, but then everybody gets the side eye if they dare go visit their sick mother. So you need to balance what the actual policy is and then what the culture of your staff is for how people are taking it to make sure that your people are getting the rest that they need. So Jeff, you've talked about, you're the solo staff member or the solo full-time staff member at your church.
I am the staff.
There you go. So what does church look like when you're gone?
I don't know because I try not to check in, but I'm serious. I don't watch the live stream.
You don't log into the live stream to see.
I used to. No, I really used to.
I was on a cruise last week logging in to make sure that Frank wasn't being a heretic.
Nah, if he is, he is, and I'm gone. That's the thing is hey, if the microphones don't work when I wasn't there, then they don't work. Then that means I need to train people better when I come back. But I can't worry about that when I'm gone. That's the way I kind of do it. So, and my church is great. There have been a couple times where I have been gone on a Sunday and I forgot something and they're like, we got it. Now, I will say part of that is because my church went for a full year without a pastor before I got here. So there are a core of people who were that group of people who just kind of handled things. And so they are able to do that. We put some things in place. There's a lockbox with a key on the outside of the building. So we don't have the key issue. If someone shows up and they can get in. The people that run the tech stuff, they know I don't need to, I literally don't touch that anymore. The people that schedule musicians and stuff is someone else. I don't do that anymore. I don't pick songs anymore. The only thing I really do on a Sunday is like I organize about 10% of the service and then I preach the sermon. That's about it. So when I'm gone, that's the only things that need to be covered. Now, when I'm gone, it means my family's gone, and my wife actually does probably more logistical stuff on a Sunday than I even do because she's overseeing the children's ministry. So for her,
Same.
the week leading up to like going on vacation can be a little more stressful. But both of us have done a pretty good job of like during that 2-hour window on Sunday morning, we don't my phone is off. And like, I mean, if the building's burning down, what am I going to do? I'm out of state anyway. So like there's no reason for me to have my phone on. Now there've been once or twice. I think one time I was actually on my way to Lakeview when I was in Florida and somebody called me in a panic. How do I turn on the TV or get the right? And they FaceTime me and it was a 30-second thing. And that wasn't vacation. I was in Florida for something else and I had to leave quick. And so that's a little different. But I would say one strategic thing for you solo guys is I prefer, and Andrew, I'm interested to hear what you have to say too. I prefer to take the Sunday off. That's the Sunday after I arrive back home. So like if I'm going on a 1-week vacation, for instance, I would rather preach a sermon, get in the car, get on a plane, leave, and have coverage for the next Sunday that I may actually be home for. So I may be gone from like Sunday until like Tuesday or Wednesday, and I would rather have the Sunday that I'm coming home for be the one that's covered if it's a 1-week thing. So if I leave Sunday, come home Saturday, I want that next day someone else preaching so I don't have to be like sermon prepping on vacation. That's just like a little extra thing.
I want really good abs and to be able to eat a porterhouse every night, but you don't always get what you want.
That's true.
So
That's true.
it's this summer is weird because there are multiple weeks where it was my parents' 50th anniversary. We were on a cruise last week and I did some sermon prepping and I got home and I preached, yesterday.
I mean, prepping ahead of time can solve this problem too.
Yes.
So.
But next week, we've got a missionary who's preaching. So I'm here all week. A missionary's preaching and then I'm leaving after church. And so I have 2 weeks this summer where we have somebody else preaching and I'm there and then leaving, which is really weird. It's usually not the rhythm that we would have things, but that's the way it is. Sometimes that's just the way that schedules work for other people. And if you have coverage, you get it when you have it. So Del, again, you're the one who's most recently transitioned into a new church. What's it like when you see churches say all the right things about rest and they have the right policy, but then the culture is actually very, very different and pastors are pressured to not use what the policy says that they are entitled to?
Like, what do I do?
Yeah, listen, I don't want to call anybody out, but you've seen the most malfunction
I've seen some stuff
in churches around the horn here.
Yeah, well, my first church, the pastor was there 18 years, barely took vacation. They ended up having to let him go. Very similar situation to Tim. And the church actually found great health after that. It was a wonderful experience. The cool thing is I was the student guy on there, but I was also the only person on staff. So I got to kind of reconstruct what the vacation looked like at the church. So that was kind of nice. At my second church, my first couple of years, I'll be honest, I followed the leadership. And because it was all new. So I didn't take as much vacation. And finally, that last bit, I was like, you know what? I feel unhealthy. I see unhealth. So I'm going to take my vacation. And I think if that is spelled out for you, especially in writing when you come to a church, that you have certain vacation, take it, man. Take that vacation. Don't leave any on the floor. You're only hurting yourself. If you're like, well, I can't take it because people can't fill in for me, well, then that should be a leadership challenge for yourself. You need to set a timeline, build some stuff in there so you can take that vacation. If you're in a hustle culture church and you feel comfortable enough, talk to your leadership about it. It's okay to tell them, I don't feel comfortable taking vacation because no one else here does. And I feel like if I take vacation, I'm going to be looked upon as lazy. And hopefully God can use that, right, to open some eyes. I would not put that past God using that. I know if one of my volunteers came to me and was like, hey, man, I feel like I'm obligated to be here every week because the pressure you put on me, man, that would do something in my soul. So I wouldn't put it beyond talking to your leadership about it. And there again, if you take all your vacation, they can't ding you for that, especially if you have a system where you put it in. But whatever happens, protect that because you want to get burnout. You want to get bitter. You want to possibly hurt your own family. Make yourself be obligated to be at church every time. It's open. So, and I will say what you guys were saying about not taking a Sunday off, that's a really good idea. Also, that whole one Sunday every 7 weeks, that's a great idea. So make sure that you could create space for you to both be there and not be there. That's important. Manage your calendar.
Timmy, you just onboarded a few new staff members. How quickly do you have the make sure you're taking your time off, make sure you're taking your vacation conversations with them?
In the interview, I mean, this was a big deal for me. Like I wanted to make sure they knew coming in to Lakeview Culture, we value your health. We value your family's health. When I meet with my staff individually, I ask a couple of questions, and one is right at the top is, how are you and your spouse? Like, I need to know, are you date nighting? Do you have the time to date night? Do you need help with babysitters? Like, when's your next vacation? When's your next sabbatic? What's big for us is we use Planning Center calendar, like a lot of people do, but we have one that's hidden from public view and just available to staff view that I actually keep on my phone. And we have all staff Sunday sabbatics as well as staff vacations in there. So I can easily pull up my phone. I'll check it for the week, who's on vacation this week, who's on a sabbatic this week. And if they're out, I know, all right, don't text them right now. Let them enjoy their time off. Or like yesterday, I forgot who was having a sabbatic Sunday yesterday. So I just pulled up my phone. I was like, oh, okay, I've got 2 staff members on sabbatic today. Got it. And that was really helpful for me. So communication is big here when you have a growing staff. So like I said, every staff meeting at the tail end, we have a quick calendar review, and we will make sure everyone knows, here's who's out this week, when's vacation coming up, here's the next sabbatic Sunday, who's got them. So we're all on the same page. That's a big deal.
Guys, both of these questions, they feel a little bit different, but they're both about the same thing, and that's being able to sustain yourself long-term in ministry. Well, the first one was, what do I do if the church feels off? And the other is, how do churches help pastors last? And in both cases, the answer is not just to grit your teeth and bear it and survive, but it is to pay attention, to be honest, to create healthy rhythms, and to remember that endurance in ministry is not something that happens on accident. It is something that is strived for and worked for, and it works best if you have a team of people that are pursuing the same thing. So, hey, if your church feels bland, if your vacation policy is vague, and if you are just tired, congratulations, you are in vocational ministry, but you get to do something about it. So pay attention to what is sustainable, what is healthy, and what is worth addressing now before it becomes a bigger issue later on. With that said, I'm Andrew for Tim, Jeff, and Del. This is Practically Pastoring. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you to Preach 26, and as always, church merch for your church. Bye, y'all.
Love you.